Hi there, I'm Amy and welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I'm back with another Sims 4 speed build, and this one's going to be in Moonwood Mill. We're doing a very werewolfy themed build. Because it's still winter, as of recording this, it hasn't yet been Christmas, but as of posting this, it will be past Christmas at this point, so if you do celebrate, I hope you've all had a really nice Christmas break. But since it's still winter, I was really keen to do still a very themed and seasonal build, but obviously with Christmas being over, I wanted to have the focus more on the season in the Northern Hemisphere instead. So I went for sort of an Arctic wolf theme here. I did use a lot of the items from the Werewolves game pack, as you'll see shortly, but you can see that here I'm just designing the roof to be a little bit lopsided, and I thought that was really fun. I kind of enjoy doing that with the werewolf stuff, just because it feels very put together, like just handmade and sort of created from stuff that the wolves have probably found around in the world. So very higgledy-piggledy and a bit like an old shack that they've just put together as a family or something. And that was kind of the vibe that I was going for here. And it is a 3-story build, so there's quite a lot of space, but I still only managed to fit in 2 bedrooms just due to how I wanted the floor plan to be. I have some very open spaces where the stairways are. I think that's fine though, because werewolves in The Sims 4 can actually just sleep anywhere. They can, once you've unlocked the ability through the werewolf skill tree, they can just sleep on the floor or even outside if they wanted to. So I wasn't too worried about the number of beds, but there are 3 beds total for your Sims if you did want to play in this build. As always, again, it is on the Sims 4 gallery just under my EA ID, which is AWayfaringFrog. It's also under the hashtag AWayfaringFrog, and that information is all in the description down below if you'd like to check it out. The colour scheme was a lot of fun with this one as well. I was going for very icy snow winter colours. I did want to keep in a lot of the wood accents though, so I picked this roof with the kind of green texture on it, which is from Werewolves. And then I included a lot of these really pale blue accent from Werewolves, as well as the white accents that you can see throughout. When I change this build a bit later though to be in winter time, it will get covered in snow, so you won't be able to see the roof very well, as I've mentioned in a couple of my recent videos where I also did snowy builds. I prefer starting the build just in summer, so I'll just start building it from Manage Worlds, and then later on, in order to get the season that you want, you have to bring a sim here and either change it with cheats or just fast forward the time so that the weather is, or rather the season is the season that you need, and that will change all of the scenery around, and it will be very snowy a bit later in the video. But for now you can at least get an idea of what it will look like throughout the rest of the year, and I think it looks really nice both in winter and just in every other season, so hopefully you agree. I do most of the landscaping in winter though, so I really can't vouch for how that looks in the summer, because I was just dealing with the dead plants all through the winter time when I decorate this a bit later on. But we are now tackling the floor plan. It came together quite simply. There were just 2 sets of stairs that I needed because it was a 3-story building. And so, as I mentioned earlier, there's quite a lot of space which I cut out. Just, it looked a lot nicer, to be honest, and made more sense for it to just be an open area. And that meant that the top floor was lofted. And I thought that was quite fun, so I put some bunk beds up there a lot later on, and it just seemed more of like a kid's space. So I thought it was a lot of fun to decorate this one. Since the Werewolves game pack comes with 2 different werewolf packs as well that your Sims can join, I didn't really have one in mind when I was decorating this, or at least I didn't decorate it solely with one pack in mind. In a way, I suppose it probably suits the Moonwood collective a bit more, which are the werewolves that want to be kind to normal Sims, and they don't want to scare them, they just want to live side by side with them in harmony, and they often have very nature-like activities that they tend to do together, so they'll do a lot of creative things like reading, gardening, fishing, things like that. And then the Wild Fangs are the Sims who have a lot of anger issues, I guess, and they want to scare normal Sims. So I was more leaning towards the Moonwood Collective out of the two for this house to be suitable for. But I really don't think it matters. You could play with either sim in this house. It's also in the area that's closer to where the Wild Fangs are, so it's definitely easier to access the hangout for those if you did go for that pack. But now I'm just adding a few more details on the exterior. I did cut out some of the window placement because I fiddled around with it quite a lot. I also tried out these little holes in the roof that came from the Life and Death pack. Because I curved some of the roofs though, they didn't fit on a lot of places, so I could only use the smallest ones and then only on certain roofs. So I didn't make it quite as dilapidated as I was hoping for, but I think it's probably the right amount, to be honest. So in a way, I'm kind of thankful that the game put the brakes on me being able to use those, because I think it's effective enough for what I was going for. I did also realise after doing the floor plan that there's only going to be one bathroom, and because whenever I build houses for werewolves, I imagine there's going to be a lot of wolves there, just because werewolves travel in packs and things. That's always on my mind. So I just wanted to make sure there was extra space for them to look after their needs. Again though, because they're werewolves, you can also unlock traits for them to just use the bathroom outside, and they can lick themselves clean rather than having to use a shower or anything. But I did include this little outhouse, which will have a bath and then a toilet, so there's an extra place to fulfill your Sims needs there. And I also included a couple of food bowls, so if you did decide to have a dog in this house, then there's space to clean them in the bathtub, and then they've got the food bowls, so they'll be able to look after their needs. I didn't include anything for a cat just because a group of werewolves felt more like you would probably be having a dog rather than a cat. But that is up to you. You would just have to include a litter tray. But at the moment I am just fiddling with the back garden and laying out where I want the outhouse. I have also put some terrain paint down. I wanted to make sure that it looked suitable in all seasons, and then I kind of lined where I would put some of the planter areas. I do add a few more later on, which you won't see because I did that off camera, as we are now in the snow, so you can't see the terrain paint at all, so it seems a bit like a waste of time. But I just thought if you did want to download the build, it would be better if it was like looked nice in all seasons, so I just wanted to make sure that that level of detail was there. And when I added the snow as well, this little roof section on the front was technically undercover and it just looked a bit odd, so I tried to cover that up by making kind of an overgrown area on the roof, as if these plants were like trailing down off the top of it and had started growing up there. So hopefully that worked out. I've never really done that before, but I've seen other simmers do it, so I hope you agree that it looks alright. Let me know if you've got any tips on things like that, because like I said, it is the first time I've tried to use those kinds of bushes to create that sort of effect on a roof before. But I think it looks quite good. We are now working on the landscaping. I kept it quite minimal, just using a few plants here and there. I used the lavender and that sort of tall grass that comes in base game and matches the little planter boxes that you can put on the windows from Werewolves. So I thought that was very cohesive, and it will be purple when it's any season except winter. And otherwise, just used a few base game plants here and there, as well as some bushes to just make this fence look a bit more interesting. I wanted to use this wired fence just because, again, it came from the Werewolves pack, and it just felt like doing a werewolf build, I wanted to try and use as much from that pack as possible. So I did go ahead and include that, and it felt very industrial, which is the style of all of the buildings in this world, which is really fun. And then to help make the back garden look a little bit more sectioned off, I included this little pathway over to the back door that leads to the outhouse. Because of where I placed the stones, some of them technically were undercover though, and then they didn't look all snowy and like they had frost on them, which was a bit unfortunate. So I think I managed to cluster them together in a way that made it make sense. So hopefully you agree, but it is a shame that they don't all have the same kind of snowy effect to them. Because I envision this house being more for werewolves from the Moonwood Collective as well, I have included a few planter boxes under this overhang area. So your plants should be able to grow there. Since they're undercover, you can grow them in any season. Assuming you have the seasons pack, obviously that would be required to have this in the snow at all, since that's not a base game feature. Off camera though, I did go ahead and add a few plants here and there, just the ones that could grow in winter seemed applicable even though it was undercover. I just figured I'd add in some seasonal plants. I also included this little fire pit. I thought it would be quite a fun item to have. It is the one that you can roast marshmallows on and things. I think I used the version from Horse Ranch from memory. Otherwise, there is a big bonfire near where the wild fangs hang out, so I didn't want to include that here, and it just didn't really fit the vibe that I was going for. The one from Werewolves has a lot of old furniture just stacked together. It looks really cool, but I just didn't think that was the right vibe for this house. So I opted for the smaller one, which I thought was a lot of fun. I also included this little bench and table set from the Journey to Batu game pack. So I'm sorry if you don't have that game pack, but I really like this little bench. I think the fact that the chairs are individual rather than just one long piece is really fun, and it's the only bench of that sort that we have that looks like that, and it looks very handmade, so it just fit the vibe that I was going for really well. As much as I don't like that pack, it does have some pretty fun items, so if you can grab it on sale and you really like building, it might be a good one to get. But I definitely wouldn't advise it for the gameplay. I don't think I've ever played fully through it because I got so bored after like 10 minutes of playing, so really don't like the gameplay in that one. But now we're just in the outhouse, and as I mentioned, I wanted to include a bathtub in here, so I went ahead and added the one from the Horse Ranch pack. There is one that comes in, it's either base game or the camping game pack. I always forget the name of it. Outdoor Retreat. I think I forgot that one in the last video as well, but it's the one that you can craft, so I can't remember where that comes from. I think it's base game. I didn't want to include it here though, just because this one looked a little bit nicer, and whilst I was going for a bit of a rundown aesthetic, I didn't want it to be totally rundown and completely handmade, not well handmade either, so I did go for the nicer looking one. Plus the paler swatch of this bathtub just fit the more icy look that I was picking throughout the rest of the interior. And this wallpaper, which was from the Life and Death pack, I think this one was, the colour of it was just so perfect, and it tied in really well with this wallpaper, with this werewolves floor tile that I've got in the kitchen and the bathrooms, so I really loved that. And I made sure to use the country kitchen kit because these counters have really nice pale pastel swatches, and they're a little bit worn down, so they're just perfect for this kind of build. And then the purple curtain, which usually I hate those kinds of curtains, just because it's always going to end up being the deciding factor over what colour scheme you go for, and I don't want my countertops to pick my colour for me like that. I think the red one from Cottage Living comes with like pink curtains on it, and just sometimes I want red without the pink, so I don't really like that feature, but I think it works in this kitchen, so it was nice to be able to use these, as I generally stay away from them because of that. But otherwise, to be a little bit different from some of my more recent videos, I went with the Cottage Living fridge and stove. So instead of combining these with the items from the country kitchen kit, I thought I'd mix and match a few here, and then lots of the clutter items come from Horse Ranch, since again they just have a lot of really run down and a lot of pastel swatches to things as well, so I thought that was a lot of fun. I am realising now as well that I didn't include the new hot chocolate station that came in a base game update recently, which is a little bit sad, but I did include a kettle and then this pressure cooker, which the latter is definitely from For Rent. I think the kettle might also be from that pack, but it just means there's a bit more for your Sims to do in the kitchen area rather than just cooking normal meals that they can get through the fridge. I also had a few issues while I was cluttering up the kitchen. I think I over-cluttered it a bit. In this corner on the right hand side, there's just so much there, so I ended up switching some of it around and just moving it across to the other side. I didn't want to put it on the other counter that's directly next to the sink, just because I liked the idea of having that open for chopping. Even though they can use the island counters for that, I just really wanted that one to be quite bare as well. So I was kind of struggling to fit all the clutter that I wanted in, but I think I got it in the end. And then for the dining space, I used this table from the Werewolves pack, which is propped up on a book, and I think that's a really fun little feature. I love this table for that. And I combined it with some chairs from Horse Ranch and then from the Parenthood pack, I think it is. So they just bring in that really nice, almost aqua blue alongside this pale wood colour that I've got everywhere else. I think it's really great. And then this little bookshelf in the corner. It's one of my favourite bookshelves in the game that is also from the Werewolves game pack. It's as tall as the short wall height, so it goes right to the ceiling, and I think it's just a really pretty piece. I love using that one. I think it really shines when you use it as a divider between rooms, but there just wasn't enough space in here, so I tucked it into the corner next to the stairs. And then we're working on the living room section of this open concept area, and I picked the horse ranch fireplace as well as the sofa from that pack too. And the rugs I was kind of undecided on. There are a lot of nice pastel coloured rugs, and I picked the two from the Life and Death pack, surprisingly. I wouldn't have gone there usually for pastel colours, but these ones actually worked really well and tied in the purples from the kitchen nicely. I was just also really happy with how patterned those rugs were too, because especially in the living area with the very stark white sofa, it felt too boring to just have a plain white rug. I did try out off camera a few fluffy rugs, but it just made the room look really boring and very bland. So I definitely really like being able to use this much more interesting looking rug with some pattern on it. And then the TV that I grabbed was just from the basement treasures kit. And I also included the woodworking table from, I think it was the Artist Studio kit, this one, which I love so much. It's really nice to have different swatches to the base game one. And it seemed fitting given that I had in my mind that they were hand creating most of their furniture to actually have somewhere where they'd be able to do that. And it fit into this room quite well here. I wasn't sure what else to do in this corner for a while, so that worked out really well, I thought. I also love these little pictures that you can get in Werewolves. They come in gold and then silver frames, so I dotted those throughout the room. I just think they've really got that icy look to them. They've pretty much become a staple in all of my occult builds, so I really do love those ones. And I just dotted those around in the living area. If you are enjoying the video at this point though, be sure to hit that like button, it really does help the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and enable notifications so you'll know when I next upload a video. And as I mentioned before, you can access this build on the Sims 4 gallery if you'd like, and the details of that are all in the description down below. You may have also seen while I was decorating a few sections of this room, including on the little stool next to the rocking chair, and there's also another one just next to the woodworking station. They're actually chairs, so there's no slot to that because it's not a table. And so you might have seen me pull out this red shelf, and that's just a piece of custom content that I've got. Again, the details of where that's from is in the description down below. Off the top of my head, I can't actually remember at the moment, but I always list the CC that I use in building down there. And it just means that you can slot things to that shelf and then pick a custom height for it to be. You can do that same kind of thing with other shelves just in the game. You just need to make sure that it's a shelf with slots big enough to fit certain items, since a lot of the in-game shelves don't really have a lot of slots, and then they can only fit the very smallest items that have a really tiny hitbox. So I just think it's a really useful piece of custom content, and it disappears from the build at the end. It's not like I leave it in there, so the build isn't marked as having custom content in it, so you don't have to worry about that if you did want to download it. But with that, we have now finished decorating the downstairs area. I just added a few small little touches into the entryway, and we are now upstairs. And I started with the bathroom here. I used similar assets to the ones that I had in the outhouse, so just this toilet, which I think was from Get to Work. And then I included just a standing shower here using the bars that come from, I think this one was from Eco Lifestyle. They just helped separate the area really nicely, but I didn't want to have a glass window. So I thought that worked really well. And then it helped keep a lot of the area looking bright and open, which was kind of what I was going for. And then otherwise I just added a sink and some storage in there. I also thought it was fun to use all of this bathroom clutter kit stuff around the room and just make it look really lived in. And whilst I don't think it's a messy room by any means, it's definitely kind of, they don't use all of the storage they've got, or they have too much stuff to put it away, so it's just kind of left around. Like the toilet paper around the toilet section of the room I think was quite a lot of fun. And I used the more messy towel swatch as well, just to help give that vibe of very lived in and not totally clean freak vibes throughout the house. I also really love these little lights that I've got from Cottage Living either side of the mirror in the bathroom. I think they're so cute and they look really handmade. I actually have a friend who made me a little fairy light once, and I still have it in the corner of my room and it's so pretty. I really love it, and I thought it was cute to include them here as well. I do also use them in the master bedroom, which we've just started decorating. I end up using them kind of as side lights instead of having lamps on the bedside tables. I did pick this bed from Horse Ranch as well. I think it was just so perfect. It just looked like a really nice foresty area in winter with the colour scheme that it had. So that kind of decided the colours for the rest of the room. I did also have a few issues in this room when it came to play testing. One of the wardrobes that I end up putting next to the fireplace ends up making it so you can't walk past the bed there. So I do scooch that over off camera. It does mean that the mirror isn't usable, but there is one in the bathroom and I think there's some downstairs, so I wasn't too worried about that. And the fireplace, because you couldn't light it whilst you could walk past it, I ended up having to move that over to the right hand side of the room next to the door to get onto the little balcony area where there's just a little telescope. So a few things do end up scooching around. I end up putting an ottoman in place of where the fireplace currently is as well, just to help fill up that gap because it looked a little bit empty without it. And then I included a bit more of a gallery wall above it. But it sounds like a big change, but it wasn't really that much of a change. I think it still looks very similar to what I have here. And I always think it's just better to be able to use a build rather than to just leave it as it was. But there's a lot of sections that you can't access or you can't use certain items that are really important to be able to use. So I just thought that was more important. I did also consider using the little weights item that we got in the Lovestruck expansion pack. I don't show that on camera though, just because I was fiddling around with the swatches for so long and then didn't even end up including it in the build. I figured I wouldn't bother putting that into here. But I just ended up deciding that the swatches were too bright. There weren't really any neutral ones, which I think is kind of a shame. It would definitely work in a lot of builds, and I still really love that we have that item. I just wish they'd given us some more basic swatches, just like a basic plain white or black or something. But not completely white and black. It would be nice to have a few like greys thrown in there so it's not completely monotonous. It still really upsets me how so many of the basic colours are just one colour. And I find them so hard to use because then your entire build just looks like someone's poured a bucket of paint all over it. So I'd prefer it to have a little bit more depth to it, but to be basically one colour rather than lots of really brightly coloured ones. Or even just a pastel swatch. I think they're just all very bright and it didn't suit the vibe in this room at all. But we are now onto the landing area. Oh, we just finished that and have moved upstairs, but I just included a little desk down there. And we are now in the kids' room where I added this games table into the corner. I thought it would be quite useful for your Sims and a little bit of fun. And then I included a bunk bed, which is from the Werewolves game pack, sorry. And I do end up scooching the one on the bottom just completely under rather than sticking out like this. I originally just wasn't sure how to fill up the space in a reasonable way, and I ended up having this vision of having this really cute little coffee table in the middle of the room and cushions around it, and then loads of crafts and things on the table. It took me so long to find a table that looked good though. They were all either way too big or just way too small, and I didn't want to size down one of the big ones just because I don't like doing that, because I just feel as if the Sims are going to start trying to put stuff on it and then it's going to be floating because it will go on top of the slot, which is in the wrong, now at the wrong height to where the top of the table is. So I try to avoid sizing things up and down when they're usable by the Sims because of that. So I ended up going for this one from Growing Together. Because it's kind of long, it fit in the room a bit better, and it's still sort of round, and it's got that kind of blue icy piece to it, which I thought actually worked really well. And then the wood matched the ladder from the werewolf's bed. So after loads of searching, which I cut out of the video, I did find the, I think, perfect table in the end. And I clutter it up with a few crafts, like I mentioned, which I thought was a bit of fun. They're not really usable. I think there's a couple of items that are, like the diary. There's also the little marbles container where you can store the marbles that your Sims collect. But otherwise, I think the rest of the clutter was just decoration rather than anything usable. But with that, we have now pretty much come to the end of the speed build portion of this video. So if you have been enjoying it, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and enable notifications so you'll know when I next upload a video. Be sure to let me know what you think of this build in the comments down below, and if you've got any suggestions for future builds, be sure to let me know as well. I've already had a few and they are on my list for next year to get through, so don't worry. I do have a few backlogged videos that I need to get out first, but thank you so much for watching. I really hope you have a great rest of your day and a very happy new year. Bye for now.